I remember all the times in my life where I was falling apart inside, overwhelmed, overworked, drained, overstimulated, very, very disappointed. And I allowed myself to feel that way because I wanted the people around me to not view me as a problem. So I allowed them to make me uncomfortable so that they could be comfortable. And by doing that, I was dishonoring myself. And there are many ways that men and women, you guys are dishonoring yourself, and that's one of them. I noticed something. For one of my places of business, there was a new member, I guess that's how I would call it. Nothing to do with online. And this person would follow me around the establishment, like with conversation, but follow me around the establishment, which is odd because most members don't do that. They kind of come to me if it's like a request, if something's wrong, if they need something, they'll say, hey, Mel, this is what's going on. I need this invoice. I need that. And I would give it to them, or if it was a complaint. But for this person, it was odd because this person was just following me around with just general conversation. Now, while you guys may think, what's the big deal? This is where social skills comes in. Social skills and social awkwardness, right? So you have to assess your relationships with somebody or your relationship with someone prior to acting with the person, because you have to act according to your relationship with that person. That's why I say a lot of people struggle with social awkwardness because they are not assessing the dynamic between them and the other individual. They're not assessing it correctly. Therefore, they're approaching it inappropriately. So when we hear the word inappropriate, you think, oh, touching that stranger's butt is inappropriate, or asking that random guy for money is inappropriate. Inappropriate is when you're addressing someone in a way where you guys' dynamic does not fit the way that you're addressing them. That's also inappropriate. Like going up to your boss and saying, hey, when was the last time you had sex? That's inappropriate. Not knowing a woman that well and you're asking her personal questions, that's inappropriate. So I don't know, maybe because of the way I was raised with my grandmother, these things are kind of like natural to me because it's like I assess the dynamic between me and another person so that I know how to approach them correctly, right? So this person's following me around the establishment. Like, it's really weird. Like, I'm in the room, I'm in the documentation room, I'm getting the documents, they're behind me with conversation. And then, I'm in my office desk and I'm cleaning the desk, they're still behind me with conversation. And then I step into one of the other rooms in the establishment to check to make sure that the AC was set to the right. And I'm just doing what an owner does. And this person is following me around with conversation. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're nervous. I don't know. This is making me feel odd because I feel like I have a person as my shadow right now. It's really, it's weird, but okay. And then the next day when I came to the place of business, the person did it again, right? And then it immediately dawned on me. As somebody like me, I used to be an ex-people pleaser, right? Like I used to be falling apart inside with feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed or just completely berated by people. But I never said anything because I didn't want them to view me in a negative light. So I would deal with it. I would stomach it, right? Now as an adult woman, if I'm feeling uncomfortable or I feel like you are making me feel in a way that is not appropriate or acceptable, I have to stop you, because when you're a people pleaser, you're being nice. I'm not a people pleaser, so I'm kind, meaning I have to stop you. If you are making me feel uncomfortable or crossing a boundary, I'm going to stop you, because my concern is not being liked or accepted. My concern is being respected. And as you get older, being liked and accepted is going to be a waste of time, because people change like the seasons. They'll like you one day and hate you the next. But when someone respects you, that rarely can ever change. Somebody cannot like you, but they still have to respect you. You may not like your boss, but you still have to respect them. That's why respect, the longevity is much better than being liked, right? Because most people are only going to like you as long as they can use you. Most people, not all people. Good people are going to like you for who you are. But most people are going to like you based on if they can use and abuse you, right? So I turn around and I look at the person and I say, if you need a document, I'll help you. If you have a request, I'll help you. If you have a complaint, I'll help you. If there's something that is a major concern or you need me to send out a letter or something like that, I'll help you. I have no problem to help you. That's what I'm here to do. That's my job. But when I come into my establishment, you can't follow me around the establishment. That's not appropriate, one. And two, when I'm here, I'm literally on the clock. I'm working. I'm not just hanging out. I'm working. And I could tell that me saying that made the person feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you why. Society has programmed women to be afraid of enforcing boundaries. And I'm not saying men sometimes don't feel afraid too. But listen to this question. If somebody wants to coerce someone or manipulate someone into doing something, right? Or if somebody wants to use emotional manipulation or tears or something like that, or compliments to get someone to do something, who's going to be easier to coerce, the man or the woman? The woman is, by a long run, going to be easier to manipulate into doing something that the aggressor wants them to do. The man is because men are not programmed to be nice. They're not programmed to do that. They're programmed to preserve themselves. Women are the ones programmed to be nice and give themselves away. That's the difference between the sexes. That's why when women cannot get close to you off the bat, they think that you're a mean girl, because they are programmed to believe if I can invade her and she can invade me, that's us being nice to each other, or that's us being kind to each other. But it's really not. It's actually very weird. But because of the way society has programmed both genders, for women, it's all about, I don't want to step on any toes. So I will allow myself to be manipulated into this situation because I don't want to be mean. That's why I always tell women, you need to get rid of that fear of the whole mean thing, because honestly, you cannot make yourself uncomfortable to make somebody else comfortable. You can't do that, because that is how you dishonor yourself. So I had to tell the person this, and I could tell that they looked a little bit confused. And I think that there are many factors that cause this. One, the first factor that caused this, in my opinion, was the fact that we're both women. So what some women fail to understand is just because we're both women, or we're all women, every woman still has their individuality. And I'm a woman that practices self-mastery and autonomy, which means that I'm not trying to belong. I'm preserving myself. There's a difference. When you're trying to belong, you can't preserve yourself because you want to be accepted. When you're trying to preserve yourself, you're not trying to belong so you can protect your balance and your peace. So for me, especially the way that I was raised, I'm used to doing things on my own. Meaning, I'm sitting there, I'm folding my laundry by myself, my grandma's in the kitchen, cooking, and she has me in the living room folding the clothes. I'm used to being very independent with the way I move around settings. So when someone tries to kind of attach themselves to me, it makes me feel very, very uncomfortable and anxious, because I'm just not used to that. It's just not, and it just doesn't work for me, right? Some people work well in groups. Some people work better singular. I'm one of those people. I work better singular, right? I've always hated group projects. So nonetheless, many people are concerned with making people comfortable at their expense. Now, here's the thing. When I say that I don't believe in being nice, if somebody has an extreme way of thinking, and extreme ways of thinking are dangerous, by the way. If I say I'm not nice, and what automatically comes in your head is, oh, she's not nice, that means she's mean. Your life is going to be interesting, because you think in extremes. Someone saying they're not nice does not mean that they're not that doesn't mean that they're mean. It just means they're not a people pleaser. And no one should want to be a people pleaser, and no one should raise their children to be a people pleaser, because when you're a people pleaser, you're going to end up in relationships with abusers. Your friends are going to be toxic, and you're going to be selling yourself short, and you're going to be overwhelmed and drained throughout your life, and you're going to be falling apart by the time you're middle aged because you spent all your years giving people more than was required. So people pleasing is dangerous. And there's not a woman out there that can make me feel evil for being quote unquote mean, because that means you're just going to teach your daughter how to be a people pleaser and get drained. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to teach my daughter to tell people, hey, there's a door. You're overwhelming me. I don't like this feeling, and you have to stop. That's the training I'm giving, because that's what's going to keep her away from predators. When you're a people pleaser, you attract predators, and not just sexual predators. You attract predatory people because they know that you're easy to get over on. So people pleasing is dangerous. And any woman that is going to say that my teachings are bad and are steering women in the wrong direction when I teach men and women to preserve their personal power and autonomy, you're the danger. Because you're teaching women and men to go out there in the real world and get chewed out and then spit out. I am teaching people to preserve themselves. Now, a lot of men can learn from these teachings, but I think that men kind of have it more down packed because society teaches men to preserve themselves. Society teaches women to give themselves away. And there's nothing wrong as a woman to give yourself away. You can. But you can give yourself away to your family, like your husband, a good husband, your kids. I'll sacrifice all that I have for my kids. They get everything. They get all of me. Though my kids are the one group that I can say my kids get all of me. They're free to, well, of course, I have my own individual boundaries, but my kids, that's my flesh. So they have certain rights that general people will not get. And I'm never going to feel, bad about that, because that's how it should be. I think that teaching women and men to just give themselves away to leisure people, I don't know who brought that up. I think that that's very dangerous. But you cannot make other people uncomfortable when you're making yourself uncomfortable. And for me, I've never felt the pressure to do that. I've never felt the pressure to do anything really that I didn't want to do, because I taught myself that I'm not going to gain anything good from stretching myself too thin. Okay, so and that's something that needs to be debunked in society, is why does society why are you seeking comfort outside of your temple, outside of yourself? This is why we have issues in the work settings, especially when you have women in leadership. It's because women think that every woman is their friend. They want to be friends with every woman that they meet. They want an intimate relationship, not sexual, but intimate, meaning they want to know, tell me about your life. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your husband. Like, women bond through sharing personal information. And it's very different from the way men bond, which is why when I would work with men, it was always very easy because they didn't invade me. They would just be like, all right, hey Mel, how you doing? I'm like, I'm good, Brad. How's it going? I'm doing good. You had a good weekend? Yeah, Brad, I had a good weekend. I just hung out with the family, chopped it up, had some food to eat. We went out to eat. It was great. What about you? Oh, I just did some bowling. Bowling. All right, cool. Well, you have a good day, Brad. All right, Mel, catch up with you later. That's it. Never heard from Brad for the rest of the shift. Never came up to my desk, never came over to me for conversation. Brad would only come to me if he had a question about a document or a file, or we would just chop it up and just talk and just laugh and joke here and there. But it was always very lighthearted. So if I ever came in and I had my headphones on, Brad would not walk over to me and force me into a conversation. But a lot of times when you're in workplaces that is predominantly women, they tend to force you to take your headphones off to talk to them. They may see you're not in the mood to speak that day, but they'll still coerce you into a conversation, force you to share about your personal life. It's very intrusive, and that type of behavior has to be checked. Because when you get around upper echelon people, it's not going to work, because it's going to be viewed as social awkwardness. because you're being intrusive and impulsive with the things that you're saying and the things that you're doing. And it's not wrong. It's just something that needs to be taught differently in the community of women. Is you cannot rush friendships. You're not going to get to know a woman in one day. So stop asking her all those questions. Friendships take time, months, years. You get to know people layer by layer. Everybody is an onion. You get to know people layer by layer. But sometimes people think by invading your space and making you uncomfortable, forcing themselves on you, like that person that was following me around the establishment, or interrogating you with questions, is how they're building a bond with you. That's not a real bond. That's very surface level. Because real bonds are built over time. That's why narcissists, what do? They love bomb you, because what they're presenting to you is not real. It's not genuine. So they have to love bomb you with conversations and questions and texts and calls, because it's not real. That's why I always tell women, if you meet a girl, sorry, not a girl, if you meet a woman and you're like, oh, she's cool, she seems nice, she seems like a balanced woman, I'd like to be cool with her, take your time with her. Don't bombard her, because that's love bombing, and that's going to turn her off. Especially if she's a powerful, autonomous woman, that's going to get you out the circle when you come at her that way, because it's going to raise a red flag. Our antennas are going to go up when you're bombarding us with intrusive questions instead of letting the conversation flow. It's the same thing with love bombers. You know, they just invade you. Like when a man is love bombing you, it's so obvious, because the compliments are nonstop. The texts are nonstop. That's why I always tell women, if you want to avoid narcissistic men, that whole texting back and forth, that's a no-go. If he wants to see you or talk to you, let him call you and say, hey, how you doing? You know, catch up. No more than an hour phone call. No more than an hour. That's it. Don't give him more than that. 1 hour. And if he really likes you and he likes a vibe, he will plan a date and move things from there. But the men who are doing that constant back and forth texting you from sun up until sundown, that's narcissistic love bombing usually. Okay.